Alrighty guys, a little update on the Talon, and then I'm going to show you some footage of me driving around Gator Loop with alligators, talking about it a lot. So update on the Talon portal specifically. So I installed the portals installation video, pretty easy install. A few things to go over after the first ride. So I went around and retorqued all these bolts. That wasn't a huge deal, probably didn't have to do that. What was a really good idea was retorquing the ball joints. See the grease that squirted out just now? That's because I got almost a quarter of a turn out of those ball joint nuts after it broke in. And that's because, you know, all the weight of the bike is sitting on that ball joint, so it gets hammered down in there a little deeper after the first ride. And if you don't retorque that, you could eventually have a problem with that ball joint wallering out the portal bracket plate. I also retorqued this ball joint, wasn't as important. You can see that these super high quality $50 Super ATV ball joints are already rusting after one ride. That's a little pathetic. But the most important thing I'd say is to retorque your ball joints after the first ride. Also went through and checked my brake alignment. On the rear, I got rid of the shim. On the front, I left the shim. That's the shim that goes on your caliper bracket. Everything's looking good otherwise. So also checked all the fluid and topped it off. All my fluids was nice and clean, so that's a good sign. On the rear, I went to a 1.5 inch rear spacer. See how it's bigger? The main reason for that was I wanted to put 12mm studs. The spacer I had on there was 10mm studs. It was an ATV spacer, so I wanted to put 12mm studs for reliability. One of my buddies stole my other spacers. No, I gave them to him. Also, I put the brass brake pads in the rear. You can see that there, so I added a lot of shiny stuff to the rear. The back brake pads were shot and they were squealing, so I got the solid brass ones. The cool thing with the solid is if you wear through the pad into the back plate, there is no back plate, it's all brass. Like I was saying, there's no shim there anymore behind that, so it keeps it lined up on the rotor, lined up on the caliper better. I also went through and retorqued all of these bolts, because these four in particular are under a huge amount of stress, right? That's handling the whole twisting force that's pushing this machine around every time. So I retorqued all those. You can see that they're actually rusting a little bit already, kind of annoying. The bolts look like really high quality hardware, but maybe they're not the most corrosion resistant. So that's a little bit annoying, a little bit of rust there and stuff. I could crank up the shocks more and get a lot more ground clearance. And everyone's like, oh, you should definitely do that, right? Well, no. It's got plenty of ground clearance. The higher you go on the suspension, the more force you're putting on everything. These rods have a much better job, much easier time controlling the angle of the tire when they're not at a crazy angle. The more of an angle you put on them, the more you're working those bushings and those rods and everything. So even though, yeah, the axles would be fine with more angle on this thing, it would work all the suspension components harder, and they're already being worked extremely hard by the 8-inch portals. So unless you really need the ground clearance, there's no need to crank it up better. Crank it up higher. As long as you're not bottoming out, right? If you're constantly hitting your bump stops, yes, crank it up. But that's not the case for me, because I don't really ride a passenger that often, and I don't have a ton of gear. So it's looking pretty good. We're gonna take it out tomorrow and test it out some more. Some upgrades I really want to do but don't really need to do would be the arch front arms, but I think I'm going to wait on that to see if I want to go bigger on the tires, and then I'll do the forward arms. And you might notice that I put the rear tires on backwards, so I was a little disappointed how it didn't want to water wheelie. Now I know I have my suspension set down low, so that makes it not want to pop up and all that. So one thing I'm going to try is try these tires backwards, see what happens with that, you know, water wheeling on the soft sand bottoms. So I'll try that, and then if that doesn't help out too much, I might switch them around out there, and I might try lowering the tire pressure. I've got 10 PSI in the rear right now. So just playing with stuff like that. With the wider spacers, you can see that the back is now maybe a hair wider than the front. I got to put a string on it. That's the only real way to tell. But I would like to put adjustable links and maybe even adjustable front arms. That's kind of why I'm thinking about going with the Super ATV arch, to have the ability to adjust my camber. And really those arms, you can adjust camber and you can adjust caster. So I might do that. We'll see. We will see. But that's about it for updates. Enjoy the rest of the footage of me talking about it. I didn't want to put all this footage in the other video because it'd been too long and it's not that exciting. It's more me going through deep water and, you know, talking about the ratios and how I like the portals and everything. Okay, we're gonna attempt Alligator Loop. Probably will get my butt wet. I'm sitting pretty high, but this trail is very deep right now. Let's see if it'll do a water wheelie. Oh, balls deep. The seat is floating away. So far I can tell you that this thing is geared extremely low. like very, very low. It's perfect. All right, first gear is too low. Let's try second gear. Alligator, where'd he go? See him through the bubbles? There he goes. He's a pretty good sized little guy. Where's Mama? That's why they call this trail the Gator Loop. I get a lot of comments like, are you guys scared of alligators? No, not at all. Snakes, a little bit. Wheel drive, second gear, low range. Oh yeah. It's pretty good. It steers pretty good. And so far, it's geared really low. I haven't got into 6th gear yet though in high range, and I've been trail riding, you know, not really bahaing. Yeah, I can't haul ass like I could before, that's for sure, but it's definitely manageable with it geared this low. I'd say it is geared a little bit too low for Holopaw, but right now it's geared perfect to go anywhere and never hurt the clutches, right? I could put in some really thick peanut butter and it's just gonna spin these tires. It doesn't feel like it's gonna strain at all. Everything looks pretty good. Brake lines aren't rubbing anywhere. You know, everything's staying away from the wheels the way I got it routed. Pretty impressed with how smooth it rides and everything for, you know, how tall it is now. You think it'd be bucking back and forth a lot. We haven't done the real big whoops yet. One thing that I am surprised by is that it's not wanting to water wheelie like crazy. I'll probably end up taking some tire pressure out at the end of the day. I've got 12 PSI in them right now. I'll probably go down to like 6 in the back. Maybe help it get a little more contact patch to water wheelie. I thought it was gonna be the water wheelie machine, but what you gotta remember is that you just added, you know, probably 70 pounds to each of the front end with the portals, and then another 50 pounds with the tires. So you added a lot of weight to the front that you got to lift up, and that weight is farther forward. That clocking, you know, puts the front wheels 1.5 inches farther forward, so all that weight's way out in front. So it's actually pretty stable as far as not wanting to lift the front up, which is good. I mean, that's what you want for mudding, right? You want your front wheels to have some good pressure on them and be pulling good. But I want to be able to do water wheelies, so we'll play with it and figure it out. I know in a deep enough hole it will definitely water wheelie. The problem is when you're this high, a deep enough hole is really freaking deep. But everything looks good. Drink all day if you don't start in the morning. Surprising, it's how well automatic mode works. It works better than it did without portals on 33s. Another alligator. Man, they're really out today. That's a smaller one. Oh, you're gonna go straight down, huh? You think you're sneaky. Better move, little guy. Alligator number 3. Wow, they're everywhere today. Look at him. He don't give a shit. That's Florida for you, man. It's a ballsy little gator. That's why I like coming out here pretty early in the morning. You see a lot of nature. Everything hasn't started to hide yet. The automatic mode is keeping me in 3rd gear through all this. Pretty awesome. It just cuts through the water so fast because you're not dragging a whole lot. Really just the portals are in the water. The great thing about being up this high is my radiator will stay a lot cleaner. Not many side-by-sides have made it down here before that I know of. I never did it in mine. It gets really soft and there's no bottom. But I'm hoping with a 38-inch tire, I'll have enough, you know, surface area to not punch through. Oh, it's getting soft, but I do have the, I definitely have the torque to creep them. See you, lily pads. flowers. Look at that. I'm gonna have a mountain of lily pads in front of me when I get to the end of this. If I get to the end of this. I can feel it kind of pushing sideways. Oh, it's trying to get up on top of the lily pads. Look at that. That's something else. Oh, taking them all with me. So far, so good. Oh, I saw a big old fish. They look like garfish. Nice. They get a fishing rod. Big lily pad jam here. Go. So I think I need to go under this tree because I know it drops off weird over here. And that's why you pretty steep climb out. Not a problem.